So I would just like to ask our sponsor to come up and say a few words. I wanted to say thank you to our sponsor, Ashburton Investments. These events don't happen without sponsorship. So thank you very much, and I'd like to invite Latham Mallory to come and say a few words.
So good afternoon, everyone. The team at Ashburton Investments is delighted to be sponsoring today's Chamber Lunch. It's fantastic to see the event continue to be so popular and current, as has been the case for many years. And it's good to see a table from RBS, who I used to work with, who have probably been attending this event for 25 plus years. Having partnered with the National Trust for Jersey for over a decade, we have seen the Sunset Concerts go from being one of the island's best kept secrets to an essential staple of Jersey's summer calendar, and a highlight for the team at Ashburton, who all get involved each year. Since 1982, when Ashburton was founded, we have understood how we are socially accountable to ourselves, our stakeholders, and the island residents. Since partnering with the Trust, we've not only been involved in the Sunset Concerts, we've also cleaned beaches, cleared fields, built beehives, and painted Ladon Hilton. Many of you will know that as the White House down at St. Juan's. We're fully invested in the preservation of our clients' wealth, that's the corporate bit, and in partnership with the Trust, the safeguarding of Jersey's natural heritage and environment for future generations. The 2018 concerts raised over the course of, 2014 concerts pushed funds raised over the course of the 10-year partnership with the Trust to over £70,000, and that's since increased to over £80,000, which I think is a good achievement. These funds have helped to maintain the coastline by protecting and preserving the island's range of native species and diverse natural environment. We're also delighted to achieve official plastic-free Jersey status at last year's event, following a rising battle against the amount of single-use plastics left behind at the concerts over the years. Something that my 8-year-old daughter reminds me of when she saw a plastic bottle that was discarded on the paths down at St. Peter's Valley recently. Watch out, our children are on the prowl on this subject. We would like to thank today's speaker, Charles Alluto, who will be speaking to us about how corporate social responsibility initiatives like the Sunset Concerts can support the work of the Trust, and how investing in our environment benefits not only the recipient charity, but also the partner companies and their teams. Before we hear from Charles today, we'd like to share with you a short video from last year's Sunset Concerts to give you a taste of what they are all about, and how together we can continue to contribute to our island's beautiful coastline. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
The National Trust has a mission to protect the environment and the historic buildings of Jersey. It's an independent charity for the benefit of most of the island, and every year, thanks to Ashburton Investments, we're able to put on a wonderful concert where families can come and sit on the grass in front of the most stupendous view in Jersey and enjoy live music. Over the last 10 years, the National Trust for Jersey has worked in partnership with Ashburton Investments, who have supported the Sunset Concerts and have raised over £70,000 for the work of the National Trust for Jersey. What is rather wonderful is that we're able to put on these concerts of live music with different bands, and they are free at the point of use. So families can come, bring a picnic and enjoy the beautiful coastline whilst listening to these lovely concerts. It's lovely to be able to offer this beautiful space to families and visitors to Jersey One of our missions is to keep the space completely pristine. So we encourage all visitors to take all their rubbish home with them and dispose of it responsibly. They leave nothing but their footprints.
Please welcome Charles Alluto.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted and honoured to have been given the opportunity by our partners Ashburton to address the Chamber of Commerce, which I believe has a very rich heritage as the oldest chamber in the English-speaking world. Indeed, we share much in common, as I was interested to note that one of your core objectives is to celebrate your heritage and embrace the future. This could equally be said of the National Trust for Jersey. While some may see the National Trust as backward-looking in its attempts to save historic buildings and areas of natural beauty, the reality is that the organisation is constantly looking to the future. In essence, we are trying to ensure that the generations who follow us may also benefit from the opportunities that we are privileged enough to enjoy today. After all, our mantra is forever and for everyone. Saying that, we fully understand and appreciate that our environment is constantly changing and that each generation will make its own contribution. But our contention is that change needs to respect, embrace and celebrate our natural and built heritage, both for our long-term sustainability and our well-being as a community. We also need to ensure that our island retains a sense of distinctive identity and place. I would also like to suggest that this makes good business sense. Today, I will endeavour to demonstrate some of the challenges that our historic and natural environment face. As the seventh most densely populated country/island state in the world, we should not underestimate the pressures placed upon us. But by working together in a practical manner and with a degree of compromise and imagination, we can also secure solutions which deliver both economic and environmental benefit. Firstly, let me place the National Trust in context and dispel a few myths about who we are and how we operate. We are a local charity, but also a successful local business. We are totally self-funded and not subsidised by Jersey Government. We are not part of the National Trust for England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and we care for around 30 historic buildings, over 1,700 verges of land, which is about 2.5% of the island, and 19,000 metres of footpaths for the benefit of our islanders. We employ around 18 staff, have 3,000 members, and we are supported by hundreds of volunteers. At the moment, we generate just over £500,000 in rental income, and it costs around £3,000 per day to run the trust. So firstly, we're going to look at the historic environment and the current state of play. In Jersey, we have around 4,000 listed structures, ranging from lighthouses to post boxes, and at the moment around 108 listed buildings are considered to be at risk. Over the last 10 years, 10 listed buildings have been demolished, including 2 of the foot buildings, 2 in French Lane and 1 in Waterworks Valley. At the moment, we have unfortunately no conservation areas, which results in blanket listing and lack of cohesive design guidelines. We also have no historic building grants available for property owners, despite increasing obligations and burdens placed upon them, such as archaeology, bats, and removal of permitted development rights. However, I suspect some of you will be wondering why on earth should we be worried about losing 10 listed buildings if we have 4,000 to play with. However, I believe most of those buildings could have been saved and gone on to make a valuable contribution to our economy. The 2 modest buildings in French Lane could easily have supported start-up businesses, with very little detriment to the current Tesco store. Also, let us briefly think about Clumbury House, a fine Georgian house in the heart of St Helier, which was demolished just over 20 years ago despite an extensive campaign to make way for an office block. This same office block is now being converted to residential accommodation. Surely, with some lateral thinking, that original building could have fulfilled both purposes with a significant saving in resources. After all, not every town in the British Isles has a stone designed building. This approach was beautifully summed up by the late Lord Esher. The pictures in front of you just show some of the buildings. This is the buildings which have caused controversy over the years. We've got the La Sailor buildings there in the top corner, which is currently being renovated. Millbrook Lodge in Waterworks Valley, which unfortunately has been demolished. We have the La Folly Inn, again, which remains still waiting to be worked upon and still waiting for a decision on that. And then also the La Fantasy, which is our finest example of cottage ornée in the island. So Lord Esher, going back to him, he said, "You do not merely protect old buildings and give them a new lease of life, but you conserve more than buildings. You conserve the gross capital value. You conserve the investment that previous owners have put into the city, in which they believed and on which they thought it was worthwhile to spend their money. You conserve their investment and you conserve the city's attraction to the outside world. It becomes a place worth visiting, worth seeing, worth staying in. These are inevitable but vital economic factors. They are not sentimental factors. Conservation is often just thought as a fad of a few. The truth is that it's hard economics. And it can work. Jack Wills is a living testament to this approach, where we saw a former jeweller's shop sensibly renovated and refurbished to provide a new use. The benefits highlighted by Lord Esher have more recently been updated by the annual Heritage Count survey undertaken by Historic England. And they found a number of things which showed the incredible value of historic buildings and the historic environment. They concluded that heritage shapes people's perceptions of places, and 1 in 4 businesses stated that the historic environment investment had directly led to an increase in business turnover. They also concluded that it was an important pull factor in business location decisions. Again, 25% of businesses in a survey of over 100 agreed that the historic environment is an important factor in deciding where to locate. They also found out that house prices were on average 50% higher in town centre conservation areas, and also that there were opportunity costs of not investing in heritage. Businesses that occupy listed buildings generate 13,000 extra gross value added per business per year. And this is Market Street. It's a beautiful street, and actually a demonstration of this investment in our heritage was recently with JP Restaurants, having substantially invested in the historic building which was formerly Lido's Wine Bar. So in a local context, let us briefly consider some heritage stats. Just under 250,000 recorded visits to heritage attractions in 2017. There are 19,194 members of local heritage organisations, which is huge, really. And 59% of visitors state that Jersey's interest in history and heritage was an important factor in deciding to visit the island. And also 78% of residents considered landmark historic buildings gave Jersey a sense of identity. I think as business owners, the core message that comes out of these surveys is that built heritage matters to our community and our visitors, and so it should also be on your radar. Essentially, we can't give you any guarantees, but if you have a trading business in a heritage building, these figures would suggest it will improve your chances of success. So how do we prevent our historic buildings, often in a sad state of repair due to neglect, from being demolished in the clamour for quick and convenient regeneration, modern amenity, and the shiny and the new? Compromise and partnership are key, as well as an acceptance that reuse should be the default and demolition the option of last resort. So this is Tessel Mill, a landmark building and probably our finest example of industrial heritage and historic commerce in the island. And this was at risk of being demolished. So the Trust worked with Jersey Water to find a solution. And Jersey Water, we did a deal. They secured some land and cash, not a great deal of cash, I'd like to say, but they also relieved themselves of a potential financial liability. We then worked with a local developer to deliver the regeneration of these buildings, which delivered 7 homes, offered space for a building development company, and what I would, I suppose, term a self-service museum, in the sense that you can go and have a look without anyone being there in relation to the steam engine room. And I think it would be incredibly sad if we'd lost such a landmark building as Tessel Mill. But you can work if you talk to each other and try and find viable solutions. Another building that was threatened with demolition, 16 New Street, probably our finest example of a complete early Georgian house in the town. It was abandoned to the elements and threatened with demolition. We worked with a merchant retail group to secure the island's first planning gain agreement so that we could safeguard the building. They benefited from increased planning for the redevelopment and once again relieved themselves of a liability. We then invested 1.2 million to create an event space, museum, visitor attraction, and it's a hub of cultural activities. The foot buildings. Again, our best example of a group of modest 18th and early 19th century buildings in St Helier threatened with demolition. Compromises were made. 2 listed buildings were lost, but 4 were retained. And again, the co-op secured its financial objectives with a new supermarket and hotel. Again, we took on the liability and we invested 1.6 million to create 2 new starter businesses, namely a cafe and a gallery, 3 new homes. However, benefits were much wider. The overall regeneration of an historic part of St Helier, securing character, identity and social importance, because this was a place of memories where people would go and buy their records. All 3 companies that I've alluded to acted in the long-term interests of the community, thereby clearly honouring their corporate social responsibilities while still not being at an economic disadvantage. I would call this clever thinking. If we now turn to the natural environment, there are equally a range of important challenges. In our island, we have 9 sites of special ecological interest, ranging from St Wan's Pond to St Catherine's Woodlands, and 16% of Jersey's landmass is within the Coastal National Park, and 70% as natural vegetation. Despite this perceived protection, we are suffering significant environmental degradation. There's been a 14% decline in the populations of butterfly species, and now the Glanville fritillary and the Le Miroir are now locally extinct. We've got declines in common garden birds, wading birds and farmland birds, with 33 on red list and 50 on amber list. The yellowhammer, the cuckoo and the turtle dove are now all locally extinct, with the puffin and skylark at imminent risk. We've got declines in soil quality, acidification, compaction, and we've also, our hedgerows and banks are considered to be in poor or denuded condition. We've got problems with our fresh water, at risk from pesticides and herbicides, PFOS, oxidixyl and glyphosate, just to name a few. And this hasn't come from the National Trust, this has come from a state's report. David Attenborough recently said that the Davos Economic Forum, if we damage the natural world, we damage ourselves, because we are all interlinked. Let us briefly look at a few figures from the UK produced by the Independent Natural Capital Committee which demonstrates the value of our natural environment. It's estimated that in the UK the natural environment's worth 761 billion, which is difficult to imagine. The annual value of carbon sequestration and pollutant removal by vegetation is 1.5 billion and 1 billion respectively. Woodland planting of up to 250,000 additional hectares could generate net social benefits in excess of 500 million per annum. If we invested in measures to restore certain stocks of shellfish and whitefish, we could deliver benefit cost ratios in excess of 6 to 1, which is huge. And then Natural England estimate that if every household in England was provided with equitable access to good quality green space, then savings of 2.1 billion could be achieved every year in averted health costs. In a local context, the natural environment is clearly fundamental to our prosperity and our well-being. Our footpaths alone are estimated 100,000 people use them every year. 92% of Jersey residents thought the natural environment gave Jersey its sense of identity, and 64% considered it the most important to protect. And again, if you invest in the natural environment, the returns are incredible. In the USA, there was a return of $10 for every $1 invested in a national park. We're not investing anything in our national park at the moment, which I believe is shameful. And every £1 spent on maintaining parks in the UK has been to generate £34 in community benefits. Jersey environment means a lot to our community, as demonstrated by a line in the sand. So how does the Trust work with its partners to meet some of the challenges that I've highlighted? Coastline at risk from inappropriate development. The National Trust worked with HSBC to develop and launch a coastline campaign which sought to raise awareness of both the immense value and vulnerability of our coastline, which culminated in a line in the sand. And then with the ongoing support of Ashburton, the campaign so far has raised over 4.8 million and secured the protection of 154 verges of coastline. It's been instrumental in establishing the Coastal National Park, and it has placed coastal protection in the very heart of planning policy. We've also pledged to protect another 1,000 verges of unexplored coastline by 2036. And obviously this is Plemont, without the holiday camp. And I think anyone looking at that today would see the immense value of safeguarding that area of coastline. Farmland and coastal seabirds, they're in rapid decline. So we've been working, we're a partner of Birds on the Edge initiative, which is working with the Countryside Enhancement Scheme, the Woyovan and Charitable Trust, Jersey Royal, and the Charlands Cooperative Society. Together with our partners, Dole and the Environment, to try and halt the decline of such birds as stonechat, searle bunting, skylark and puffin. Conservation grazing, bird food crops, hedgerow restoration and ongoing survey work have facilitated the reintroduction of the chough, which has been absent from our island for over 100 years. And it's also given us a better understanding of the threats to our seabirds, including our tiny puffin colony, which has only 4 pairs. But the good news is that we know they're breeding, and puffling was spotted last year. So there's some good news. This is the yellowhammer, which is now a beautiful bird, which unfortunately is now locally extinct. So you won't get the chance to see one of those in Jersey anymore. And here's the puffins cruising around just below Plemont. Pollinators, big topic at the moment, and they're in freefall. There's been a terrifying decline of 75% of individual flying insects in Europe over the last 50 years. So the National Trust thought, well, we've got to do something about this. So we worked with the Prince's Trust and the Back to Work scheme and our tenants, because it would have a big impact on the tenants of the main house, to address the ongoing threat to our pollinators. So we dug up the lawn at the elms, removed the turf and the topsoil and proceeded to sow a wildflower meadow. So far we've recorded 7 species of butterflies, 6 species of bees and numerous insects. Some people have suggested it looks untidy, but it is a riot of colour and supports biodiversity as opposed to being a lifeless, flat, green and tidy lawn. Nature deficit disorder. It's now widely recognised that there is a growing disconnect between our children and the natural environment. And in the last 12 months, we took a child into some woodland in Waterworks Valley, and she said, "I've never been in woodland before," which is terrifying really in such a small island, that all of our children are not being exposed to the full remit of our natural environment. So we work with HSBC, and our education programme sought to bring nature into the very heart of the classroom and encourage local children to discover the joys of our countryside and go wild. We've got rock pool rambles, bug safaris, woodland wanders, nature detective notebook, hop to it, and our wetland discovery events, which have reached just under 3,500 children during the last year. Health and well-being. The natural environment can have a positive influence both in terms of mental health and physical well-being. It costs the NHS a staggering 1.5 million an hour for treating diabetes. So, again, the Trust has sought to try and address this with its corporate partners. We provide 19 kilometres of footpaths and a range of activities to help people get out and about. So we have a walking festival, which is sponsored by Intertrust. We had the Love Nature Festival, which is sponsored by Jersey Electricity. And then we have our most probably energetic event, which is our 30 Bays in 30 Days, which we do with another charity, Jersey Hospice. And again, we have a range of partners helping us with that. But what I really wanted to show with these photos is that often the people seem to think the Natural Trust is sort of green welly brigade. But actually here we've got green swimming hats on instead. We're all looking quite lively. Hopefully these partnerships demonstrate that our natural environment matters on so many different levels. I'm going to now appear a little bit philosophical, so I apologise. But above all, we should not forget that humanity has an immense appetite for natural beauty and open landscape, as well as delighting in birdsong and the opportunity to engage with wildlife. In 1883, one of the founders of the National Trust movement and one of our greatest social reformers, Octavia Hill, stated, "We all want quiet, we all want beauty for the refreshment of our souls." This is a fundamental human right, and as a society, we must ensure that we are not complicit in stealing it from those who follow on. That well-known but perfectly attuned phrase comes to mind: "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." It is frightening to think that our children in Jersey will never hear a cuckoo, that great harbinger of spring. Never hear the gentle purr of a turtle dove in summer. Wonder at the exotic colours of a swallowtail butterfly. Enjoy the tranquility and sense of freedom derived from open landscapes, or simply cup their hands to drink from one of our freshwater streams in fear of what it may contain. These natural wonders and rights are rapidly disappearing before our very eyes, and unfortunately we simply accept these losses as inevitable. Indeed, it could be argued that perhaps this is the price to pay for our own good fortune, but how on earth do we justify leaving such a legacy to future generations? I'm not sure that the pursuit of GDP or economic growth will cut the mustard. The dulcet tones of David Attenborough are hardly ever associated with scaremongering, but even Sir David has found a new voice in his new series, Our Planet, which is currently available on Netflix, stating that we only have 20 years to turn things around. In the last 50 years, the population of wild animals has reduced across the world by 60%. If we are truly to embrace the future, as this chamber itself espouses, then we all need to jointly act as custodians and use the planet's resources far more wisely than we have done to date. As a small community, we have the unique ability to act quickly, decisively, and with leadership. Indeed, we're incredibly nimble when anyone threatens us from Westminster. But in relation to the environment, our government talks big, but continues to suffer from procrastination, lack of courage and conviction, and endless unfulfilled strategic objectives. I would therefore urge Jersey's business community to take the lead, act decisively, and recognise that sustainability needs to be at the very heart and core of every business. Not only does it make economic sense, but acting responsibly for the long-term benefit of society as a whole is the very ethos of CSR. We would also encourage you to work with us as your partners to create a business environment in which securing a thriving natural environment and protecting Jersey's culture and heritage are seen as important KPIs. We should not underestimate the challenge ahead. Our planet has, as effect, entered intensive care. But through effective partnerships, we can make a difference. So does the Trust practice what it preaches? Let me share with you a few of our strategic aims. We want to urge government to set a date for all new cars in the island to be electric, to improve air quality, reduce carbon emissions, reduce noise levels and improve quality of life. Scotland's aim for 2032, Germany 2030, India, which is amazing, 2030. We still haven't got a date. We want to increase our woodland cover from 7 to 10% within the next 10 years. We want to encourage government to create no-take zones for our marine environment within our territorial waters to allow species to recover. We're pledged to secure another 1,000 verges of coastline by 2036, and we want to create areas specifically for wildlife so that it's able to thrive without disturbance. We want to improve our agricultural holdings, and we want to urge government to adopt a policy of biodiversity and net gain for development. And on our side, we will ensure our properties are as energy and water efficient as feasible. Finally, I would like to conclude my talk with a challenge to you all. These are some of the reasons why you should invest in us. We don't just talk about it, we do it. We deliver tangible results. We're a small team and we're approachable. We're here for the benefit of the island, which is the most important thing. And together we can make a difference. So, the Chamber of Commerce currently has 550 members because you all recognise the value of networking and supporting Jersey's business environment. We believe that Jersey businesses should equally value the environment in which they operate to ensure that it remains an attractive, vibrant, distinctive and healthy place to work. We would therefore like to challenge every member of Chamber to become a corporate member of the National Trust for Jersey to demonstrate your commitment to our beautiful island. Your annual fee would only amount to £1.37 a day, but would generate for us over £250,000 per year, which would enable us to acquire an area of coastline equivalent to Plemont every year. And there are some wonderful sustainable shopping bags at the back where you can find details. But this is not simply about fundraising, but rather urging the business community to recognise that a good return can indeed be generated by investing and supporting both the natural and built heritage, which makes our island home so special. Without it, we will all be so much poorer in so many ways. Thanks so much for your time today. Beatrix Potter, one of the Natural Trust's greatest benefactors, stated, "The trust is a noble thing, and humanly speaking, immortal. There are some silly mortals connected with it, but they will pass. I will leave you to judge the pertinence of these sentiments, and on that note, I will now pass you back to your President. Thank you very much."
Thank you, Charles. Great speech. We have time, as usual, for a few questions. So if you have a question, please put your hand up, say where you're from, and we've got a roving mic walking around the room. There's one over there.
Hello, I'm Charlotte from BCR Law. My question's about what I see as green deserts around the island, where you have people with huge gardens that they keep manicured, and I was really interested to see the Elms lawn. Is the National Trust planning to try and do more around the island to encourage people to have wildlife areas rather than their manicured gardens?
Yes, we are. We're part of a new project, which hopefully you'll hear more about shortly, which is called the Pollinator Project. And that will encourage people to copy what we've done essentially at the Elms. We have we've borrowed the project from Guernsey because they've had great success of it. And we're really excited because we see this project now going across the Channel Islands. And we're very keen to see increased cooperation across the islands in relation to environmental issues. So we'll be really pushing for people to go out there. There's also a campaign called No Mow. And again, it's about encouraging people just to think about leaving areas where you don't mow the grass, you allow it to come through, and it can benefit insects in so many ways. So it's not incredibly difficult. It's an easy thing to do. You don't need to apply herbicides and pesticides, and I'm sure that will keep Jersey Water very happy because we need to rapidly reduce that. I think the agricultural community get blamed a lot for the pesticides and herbicides, but also if you go into any garden centre, you will see shelf after shelf after shelf of herbicides and pesticides. So there's obviously a market out there. Someone's using it, otherwise the garden centres wouldn't be selling it. So I think we've all got to take responsibility in that respect.
Another question, please? Andrew.
Bruce from Public Affairs. Charles, that was an excellent presentation. Have you ever given it to government? Because government's probably not listening enough at all to what you're saying. Have you made that presentation to government? And if not, are you going to do so?
I haven't given that presentation to government. We have a slightly strange relationship with government in the sense that I suppose as an independent organisation we're very proud of the fact that we're able to speak when we need to speak, but our engagement with government is not as good as perhaps it needs to be. So I think that's a very good point, and we were talking about potentially giving a presentation to government in the not too distant future, so we will take up your suggestion heartily.
Charles, just picking up that point, I was going to ask a similar question actually. It's noticeable that this is the first chamber lunch that I can remember ever where there has not been a government minister, a politician, a senior officer in the room. And if there is, please let me know. And yet, if we had a speaker on tax or on the finance centre, I can bet you bottom dollar I'd sell 4 tables. So we've got corporate social responsibility, and you're pushing against an open door in this room. Shouldn't we have government social responsibility too?
I think that's true. You know, I did allude to the fact is that the government does have a tendency of speaking big, but not actually delivering in relation to the environment. You know, we've been advised that it's one of the key strategic objectives, but we haven't seen how that's necessarily going to be delivered. And I suppose one would contend from the lack of presence here rather, that how seriously they're taking that. Unless they know that I'm not a very good speaker, I'm not sure.
Another question? Yes, question.
Hi Charles, Elliot Smith here from Jersey.
Yeah, it's on.
Elliot Smith from Jersey Water. Great speech, if you liked what you're saying. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you think the islands should be farmed. Should there be changes to the way the farming practices and how it's regulated and controlled?
I do think that we need to considerably beef up our requirements in terms of nitrate and phosphate levels. I think the reality is, and it's not a good reality, but the current agricultural model would be considered to be broken. This is also considered to be the case in the UK, and that we're no longer, in the longer term, going to be able to rely on pesticides and artificial fertilisers to deliver sustainable crops. So I think there's going to have to be a complete rethink of what we do. Not only are we having problems with water pollution, but we've got a serious nematode problem throughout soils in Jersey. There aren't the kit now to be able to deal with that nematode problem because one of the chemicals they were using is now considered to be dangerous. So I think there's going to have to be a big change. We're going to have to think about doing rotation. We're going to have to reduce the amount of potatoes we plant. And we're going to have to diversify. You can start to see small movements, one gets very excited about a bit of hemp growing and such like. But if you look around the island at the moment, it's covered in plastic, it's covered in potatoes, and I can bet your bottom dollar that we're going to have too many potatoes for the Easter market because we've had a very good season, and they're all going to come up at the same time, and we're not going to be able to sell them all. So, we've got to be realistic about what we want to achieve, and I think we completely need to review our agricultural model, and I think government, again, needs to be totally engaged in that process. It would be really interesting to do a cost-benefit analysis of the potato industry to see what it brings to the island as a whole, because I think that would make very surprising reading.
Oh, wait, can you make a question? Yes, question down here.
Thank you, Charles. My name is Brian Murphy. I'm with the French delegation today from Brittany. Maybe a modest idea would be to think about stop taking hundreds of tons of freight from France, Spain, Italy and southern Europe, all the way up the French coast, across the UK, over to Portsmouth and then to Jersey when it's literally a pebble's throw across the water from where it originates from. So that's something we could perhaps bear in mind anyway. Would you also like to say thank you to your chairman and the chamber for inviting us today?
We have
I'm more than that.
Hey everyone, my name is Emma Moron, and I'm not here in this capacity today, but from what you're all talking about, I feel compelled to speak. My husband is a Jersey oil grower, so interesting, Charles, to hear what you're all talking about. We've been growing in Jersey. My husband is the 6th generation of farmers here. So we know quite a lot about soil. We are very passionate about soil. We're both from Jersey, we've both grown up here, and the last thing that any farmer here would want is for soil quality to deteriorate because it's our livelihood. So what I would say is, first and foremost, the plastic that you see is not single-use plastic. We use it at least 3 times before it gets shipped back from recycling. So fear not on that one. We work very closely with Jersey Water, with our sampling. Your point about the garden centres is very pertinent indeed, because anyone who works with us and works in farming has to go on a 3-day course and pass that course in order to work with chemicals at all, which I'm sure your average gardener who chucks a bit of whatever's left over down the drain hasn't done that. So it's down to all of us to be responsible. And the things that you mentioned, such as the Birds on the Edge project and the hedgerows, we actively take part in all of that because we live here too. We want everything to look as lovely as it still does. So we recently got involved with the Eco Jersey, which is a new initiative which the Jersey Evening Post is involved with, and Co-op and Jersey Electricity, because we're very, very passionate. You can probably hear it in my voice actually, about the local environment. And there has been studies done on what agriculture brings to Jersey. Unfortunately, as you're experiencing, local government talks big and doesn't actually support the agriculture industry. We ship out a lot of, not just potatoes, but other crops as well, and that helps to keep freight costs down for the rest of the island. So if you think about everything that comes into Jersey, they don't want empty containers going out of Jersey, they want those to be filled. So that's one of the things. Obviously, we all contribute to the GST, all of our staff do, so yeah, we're contributing quite a lot. Sorry, I could go on all afternoon about this because I'm really passionate. So yeah, I've probably said enough, but all of the things that you said we take on board, and we're very, very keen to work with all of our partners to make sure that the island still looks as good as it does today in 10 years' time.
Just like to say, that's incredibly heartening. I'm not picking on anyone in particular. I think as a principle, the farming models need to be reviewed, and whether that relates to dairy, whether it relates to beef farming, whether it relates to potato farming. I think there has been an incredible reliance on chemicals, and I suspect in the future we're going to have to think about how we look after our soils in a different way. But as you say, if there's an open door, then happy days, because that's where we all need to get to, really. And also chemicals cost you a lot of money. So if we can try and find ways where you can use less chemicals, but still your soils are in good heart, then it's a win-win.
Okay, please join me in thanking Charles Alluto. Okay, that's it from me. Just want to hand over to Murray to close the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Elliot. Draw your attention to Deputy Susie Pinnell, the Minister for the Treasury and Resources, who is our next speaker. There'll be some government in that room. You bet. And obviously with personal tax reviews going on at the moment, with discussion already for the budget come November, October, then I'm sure there will be plenty of people very interested to hear what the Treasury Minister will be saying in our lunch, which is going to be in May the 15th. It'll be at the Pondor Hotel. Do hope you'll join us for that, and please make sure you go online and book your tickets early for that, because I think that'll be a sellout. We also have the AGM just before that. Once a year, Chamber goes through this ritual called an AGM, like many businesses do, and we'll be doing ours at 11 o'clock in the morning in the Orchard Room downstairs below the function room at the Pondor Hotel, and as a member of Chamber you are very, very welcome to come. That would normally be it, and we just wrap things up and send you on your way. Before then, I just wanted to draw your attention to, as Elliot alluded, I'm going to embarrass him slightly, draw your attention to the fact that our President steps down before the next lunch after 2 years in charge. Being the President of Chamber may sound like a lot of fun. I started to write a little bit of a job description for it and realised that it means having at least 1 or 2 calls from the media every week of the year at unsociable hours. It means you have to keep 7 committees in order of different sectors of the community and their chairs. It means you have to run an executive council. It means that you have to meet the ministers of most of the departments in government every 6 to 8 weeks and find out what they're up to, and then actually ask them again what they're really up to. It means that you've got to be front and centre of everything from topping up your shop at Brexit time to whatever the flavour of the month is of stories at that time, and it takes an awful lot of time. And then when you realise you have to do that for 2 years and you don't get paid a penny for doing it, whilst you're still running your other companies, you realise that it is not so much fun as it may seem. And I'm only saying this because Jennifer's not in the room and she takes over in May, so we're telling her it's a great deal of fun. However, it is his last official function, and I just wanted to put on record from Chamber's perspective and from the executive of Chamber how much we value the leadership of our President, the person that takes it forward, the person that's always in the front of the paper, the person that's always in the middle of King Street doing an interview, and the person who on social media really does get a kicking. And trust me, I know a bit about that, so I'm really grateful it's you. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank our President, Elliot Lincoln. I should say in the London Marathon, do look out for him. He will be there trying to run in under 2 hours, 40 minutes, which means I hate him even more. We wish you good luck with that. Thank you to everyone who's come along today. Thank you to Charles and to our sponsors, Ashburton, indeed, for sponsoring today's lunch. If you are a corporate entity and you wish to support the good work of the National Trust, there are those bags at the end of the room. If you're a corporate entity and you wish to sponsor a lunch going forward in 2020, we have some dates available in 2020 only. And of course, you can get in touch with us at the office. and via our website. That is just about it from us at Chamber today. Thank you very much indeed for coming. Have an enjoyable Wednesday afternoon. Good afternoon.